9:17 on Weekend Sunrise. It's one of the big steps, the biggest steps in many people's lives, tying the knot with the person of your dreams. But sometimes, just sometimes, the dream doesn't last. Katy Perry and Russell Brand learnt that the hard way as they this week joined the truckload of celebs who have split. For ordinary Australians, every third marriage ends in divorce.
Among their main causes are working and financial pressures, unrealistic expectations, and our increased self-obsession. So, of course, there are uplifting stories of true love and couples that make marriage work. But are they no longer the norm? We are joined now by relationship expert and psychologist Anne Hollins, women's health editor and happily married Felicity Harley.
Hello.
And motivational speaker Craig Harper, who's in Melbourne. Good morning to all of you.
Morning, guys.
Anne, we'll start with you. What place do you think marriage has in society these days?
Oh, that's a really good question, isn't it? Let's answer that briefly. Look, I think marriage is very popular still. The rates of marriage have actually gone up. A lot of people wouldn't be aware of that. So it says that it has a meaningfulness for us in society today. But I think it means something different to what it did for our parents or our grandparents' generation, when marriage was really an institution that you had to be part of to get respectability in society, and everyone kind of did it, or most people did. Whereas now, marriage is really a relationship of choice. We don't have to get married, so it's very interesting to think about why those, such as yourself, Felicity, who are getting married, why you're getting married when you don't have to.
Yeah, and straight over to you, Felicity. Why? Not why. What does marriage mean to you?
Well, I think for me, getting married was a public declaration in front of my family and friends to say that I'm making a long-term commitment to my husband Tom, and I actually want to go through life as a team with him. And I think marriage is really important to me. I love being married. I think that I'm actually a better person being married, and there are many benefits, and there are many studies that show the benefits of marriage: increased health, a better sex life, more financial stability, things like that. Now, I would argue that even though it's a third of marriages in divorce, there's actually two-thirds of people who are married that are actually making it work.
Yeah.
So I've actually been to 7 weddings in the past 6 months, so I think weddings are still very relevant, and I'm all for marriage.
Yeah, there's nothing nicer than a wedding. Craig, you've said you don't plan to ever get married. What brought you to that decision?
It's not high on my list of things to do, and can I say that if you saw Felicity's husband, you'd know that her husband is not representative of the Australian male.
That's true.
And I don't think any women would get unmarried if they were married to Mr. Universe with the head like an undie model.
So, Felicity, could you please leave the set now? You've been disqualified.
Have you seen her bloke? He's ridiculous. I'm not anti-marriage. I'm just anti-getting married for the sake of getting married. And I think sometimes people see marriage as some kind of solution to some kind of problem, especially when people feel compelled to be married by a certain time. So it's something that they have on their to-do list. So I think it depends the reasons for getting married and the way in which we get married. And of course it can be a great thing and it can be an unhealthy thing, like most things in our lives.
OK, now there was a little bit of controversy earlier in the week, a lot in fact, on Sunrise. Professor Eric Anderson claimed that men and women can be excused for cheating. Now, we're going to get your thoughts on that in just a tick. Let's refresh our memories first.
We know that women cheat at very high rates as well. In fact, research by the Height Report in the United Kingdom show that women in relationships, married relationships, so these are older women, they cheated about 70%. Men cheated about 72%. So this is not just to villainize men. This is to take a very critical look at monogamy and ask us, does monogamy last for a lifetime? Can one marry their partner at 20 or even 30 years of age and expect to not want sex with anybody else for a lifetime? And the answer to that is very clearly no.
And controversial it was. Anne, what do you think?
Well, look, I think it's an interesting issue today. There's obviously the biological argument about whether we're designed to be able to be monogamous. My argument to that is that we overcome our biology in a whole lot of other ways. We don't, hit our boss when we're angry with our boss. We overcome that urge. So we're quite capable of doing so, and a lot of people don't cheat. But I think what's hard these days is that we're living in an environment which is very focused on ourselves as individuals. Our happiness as an individual is number one. And we're very hooked on this feeling of being attractive and being in love and the whole romance of it. And after a while, when you've been in a relationship with one person, sometimes we start to feel like, well, maybe we deserve that kind of high that you get from a new encounter with somebody else or a new romance, and we go looking for that. And I think we haven't really kind of grasped this idea about building a partnership that's going to meet the needs of both people over a longer time, and the changes that take place in a partnership of some length of time. Marriage is only going to work, or monogamy is only going to work, if you actually create that kind of partnership that meets the needs of both people.
Craig, as a man,
Yes.
do you think humans are built for monogamy?
You know what? I think there's no global rule on it. I think that some people monogamy works very well for, and being married to the one person for 100 years is great for them, but for other people it's not. It's kind of like we don't all need the same diet or the same exercise program. And also I think that what's great for somebody in 2012 might not meet their needs in 2020. So I think as we evolve, so do our needs, and that's not to be selfish. But I think practically, if you just look at the stats on marriage, not only the third that failed, but also of the remaining 2/3, how many of those are genuinely fulfilled and happy, I think you'd find sometimes the figure's not so high.
Felicity, apart from being married to a guy who Craig has a massive man crush on, what does it take? What else does it take to make a marriage work, do you reckon?
Well, for me, and Larry, you've been married a lot longer than me, so you could probably answer as well. But for me, it's a lot of patience. I think understanding and really listening to what the other person wants. I think also a marriage, it takes work. It's hard work. It takes effort. And I think back to Anne's point, it's interesting, I was reading a study that came out last week from the University of Queensland, and it looked at Chinese couples, and Chinese couples have very low divorce rates. And they enter into marriage with words like togetherness, partnership, whereas in Western society, we enter into marriage with words like love, passion.
Prenup.
Prenup. So I think it's just being a team, and for Tom and I, it's about being a team through our lives.
All right.
Okay, well, we have
Just
to
keep Craig away from Tom, won't you?
and most of the male
He is one
population.
good-looking man.
Calm down, Craig.
Settle down there, big fella. He's
Maybe
married.
that's why I'm not married.
Yeah.
Similar,
I was going to
Craig.
say, Anne, could you just work out why Craig's not married, please? Because he's trying to...
Not on air.
And Felicity, Craig, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Good stuff, guys. Good segment. Coming up for you, they might look foolish, but these guys are on a mission. The full story soon.
But next, need help to get a big idea off the ground? Don't move a muscle.